You alright, guys? I'm the world around you, and this is Pause for Thought on Threshold FM. This week's a bit of a challenge for me. I can't remember who it was, but someone at some point has suggested that I look into a fella called HenryAvery, or HenryAvery. I've never heard of him, so I thought, fuck it, I'll give it a go, try and figure out who he is, have a look into him. He must be interesting if someone's gone out of the way to get in touch about him and say, you should do an episode on this guy. But the name, immediately in your head, like, what does HenryAvery as a name, what springs to mind? Like, for me, it builds an image in my head of a bloke around in like the 1600s, because it just sounds like that sort of a name. Feathery hats, like a fancy dress pimp, maybe a sword fight, But, maybe not. I don't know. At this point where I'm saying this was what my initial interpretations of the name was before I looked into it. I thought it might, be nice because I don't know who he is. Make a little note on him and that straight away. And then I thought I'd come back and write me notes and that. But, so, he sounds posh, innit? He does sound posh with a name like HenryAvery. I mean, saying anything like that probably sounds posh. It does in my head anyway, but maybe not to use in my accent. Anyway, I looked into him a little, and it turns out I got a couple of those little bits right there, which is making me think I must have had an idea about him in the back of my head somewhere. Maybe when whoever it was you mentioned him, maybe I had a little quick look at him. Fuck knows. But HenryAvery, he was an English pirate. To many, I suppose he was the epitome of the English pirate, knocking about on the Atlantic and Indian Oceans in the late 1600s. This guy had eventually lead an army of 440-ish pirates and performed the largest pirate heist in history. Apparently he was born near Plymouth in the southwest of England, and this bloke's parents and background were quite low in the socio-economic ladder. Like modern day times, you'd be considered working class or lower middle class. But some other sources I found seem to say that his family were related to the owners of Wycroft Castle, so maybe he was aristocracy in one way or another. Maybe he was just a distant relative. Maybe my sources aren't all that reliable, like not going off my past episodes. I don't think they really are. Originally, he was in the British Navy, and he'd work on boats for most of his life. Easily the most important ship he was ever stationed on was the Charles II, which, when he was on it, was destined for Spain, but due to some alleged clerical error, it would eventually lead him to mutiny against its captain and earn the title of captain for himself, even going on to become the king. Now, piracy itself is something that seems to be a very old trade, and it's evolved over the years. In the 17th century, it seemed to be a way for countries to terrorise one another without having to claim it was them directly. In the 90s, it was fat bearded blokes renting copies of Robin Williams films on VHS out the back of a Volkswagen on my old council estate. He used to come around on a Friday evening, you've just had your chippy, you hear the horn go, everyone's doors open and close, and everyone runs out to this estate, the car. Look at a big boot, trunk if you're in America, I guess. And then he'd just be like, well, what do you want to rent for the weekend or for the week? You give him a couple of quid and he'd let you have a fucking copy of a film for a few days. That was piracy in the 90s anyway, but now in 2020 it's returned back to its roots, innit? It's come full circle and we've now got pirates back in the seas once again, but instead of just robbing trade routes, they can also now kidnap, murder, steal, and do all of this aboard intercontinental cruise ships, ruining the holidays and wetting the trousers of middle class families the world over. Anyway, let's have a song. This is a new song. This is Texas and Wu-Tang with High. It's hard to decide if HenryAvery actually existed. As a pirate, he made waves for the Spanish, the French, and he even turned on his fellow Englishmen and that, innit? But it seems even as a pirate leader, well, as I said a minute ago, he was dubbed the Pirate King. He seemed to be quite a kind leader. He wouldn't just butcher the captains of ships he commandeered. He'd often allow them to leave and send them and any other surviving ship workers who didn't want to become pirates. He'd let them all go to shore. Not ensuring the survival as such, but at least he didn't enslave them or just kill them there and then just to throw his weight around and that, innit, playing Billy Big Bollocks. Unfortunately though, he didn't show that same graciousness to African people. Of course, during this time the slave trade was fucking roaring, but did you know that the RAC, obviously, not the fucking breakdown service in the UK, but back then RAC stood for Royal African Company, that seemed to hold a monopoly over the Atlantic slave trade, and you had to possess a licence from them in order to be a legitimate slave trader. Now, true to his relatively new pirate nature, though Henry weren't really, he wasn't going to try and play by anyone's rules because he'd just become a pirate. There are stories of him not only taking Africans as slaves without a license, but also taking slavers as slaves as well. And although it's obviously not a good thing to be doing, it is kind of remarkable, isn't it, how he just seemed to want to say fuck you to everyone and everyone's rules, which is mad. It's almost like he was just told to stir the pot, and whilst I can't find anything that seems to be solid evidence of this, at least not in a few hours worth of reading on the internet, I have found a quote that claims Avery, along with Blackbeard, Edward Teach, I think was his real name, but obviously more people, I've only ever heard of Blackbeard, I had to look up his name to find Edward Teach. But apparently them pair were officially supported in the reigns of transatlantic terror by the American colonies, or the colonies that were colonising America at the time, like the English, the Spanish. They were sort of in cahoots with the pirates, it seems. And it's mad because you don't even, when you think of America back then, America wasn't like a solid collective that was already properly formed in the mid 1600s. And it's mad to think that it was managing to perform these nefarious tasks with people deemed criminals, even then. Just like all the rumours that circulate on the internet about how they currently have dealings with South American countries and Middle Eastern nations. It's fucking mad, mate. Sticking with pirates though, in one of my favourite books, An Underground Education by Richard Zacks, as Captain Kidd there was a captain, a pirate captain, it turned out, called Captain Kidd. And his real name was William Kidd, and he was alive around the same time as Henry Morgan and as HenryAvery, Henry Morgan being another pirate at the time. And before I go into him, it's worth saying now that HenryAvery may or may have not been HenryAvery's name. There are records of Henry using an A and an E to start the spelling of Avery. Also, he was known as Jack Avery, John Avery, Benjamin Bridgman, which is one of the better names he had, Long Ben as well, which is probably what I assume he was using in bars and that, to try and chat birds up. But these are the aliases that I can find, innit? Like, I imagine there was a lot more. Like, he's only going to have been caught with a few. Why would he keep using the same names all over the place? Unless I suppose it's for his reputation. But I guess you'd recognise the boat, innit? Because apparently the boat looked quite nice, which is what led to the boat being called the Fancy once they'd taken it over. But if you can cast your mind all the way back to maybe episode 4, maybe episode 5, when I covered Adam Worth, he also had a lot of aliases, and again, we can only be sure of a few of them. It would appear that Henry was a very persuasive and intelligent man. Otherwise, he'd never been able to have been elected captain of his ship when the mutiny occurred. He also wouldn't have become like the pirate king and that, innit? So, what if HenryAvery was only a pirate for 2 years because he was also a pirate named William Kidd at the same time, and he was also a pirate known to some as Henry Morgan? Both notorious pirates in the late 17th century, but what if he wasn't a single man though? What if it was a collective? What if none of them ever existed though? Like, none of these people, as actually these characters, ever existed. Maybe they've just been added to history retrospectively to try and blur the lines between the perpetrators of what seemed to be literal war crimes and the countries that were performing them. Anyway, let's have another song. This is Atmosphere with the Sunshine. Little advert for you. Did you know that I've been writing some books? Got Uneducated Guesses, which I wrote to annoy my uni teachers. I got a book about how to shag an antique table. I got a book of fake facts called The More You Know. And I've got 50 Ways to Torture a Sloth. Now, the table one seems to be what most people like the most. More You Know is probably my favourite. And 50 Ways to Torture a Sloth is probably the more like any book that you'd find in a shop. The most likely one to find in a shop. But you're not going to find in a shop. You're only ever going to find it on my website or on Amazon, on worldaroundyou.com. Anyway, we'll crack on with HenryAvery. Pirates in the 1600s seem to be something that actually brought countries together, as weird as it sounds. Much like World War I did though. Like, World War I brought countries together, it brought the people within the countries together, and then it brought different countries all together. World War II did the same thing, and all realistically. The War on Terror's done it as well, you might not want to admit it, but it did. Could pirates have been the invisible enemy of the 17th century? pirate Henry Morgan, as I mentioned, was pretty much allowed to be a criminal of the seas, except in February 1971, I think it was. He seemed to piss off the English and the Spanish by raiding Panama City. This is because in July 1670, the English and the Spanish Empire signed a treaty called the Treaty of Madrid, and this was the first time that the Spanish was seen to allow the English to possess any colonies in the Caribbean whatsoever. But instead of being hung for what he did, or drowned, or quartered, or burnt alive like a witch would have been, as a show of goodwill to the Spanish, the English brought Henry Morgan home and knighted him. And King Charles II, the actual king, obviously not the boat, named him the Lieutenant Governor of Jamaica, which, to be honest, seems like a massive fuck you to Spain. Almost like the English forces had used this pirate to their advantage, except instead of vilifying him like they would nowadays, or suiciding him with like a belt and a tangerine and a pile of pornographic etchings, they treated him like royalty, which is fucking weird, isn't it? It's weird how potentially there's it's not synonymous, that wouldn't be the word, innit? But there's sort of reflections. Would you say it mirrors modern society in a way? And there's proof that warring nations would set pirates against enemy merchant ships as well. And instead of paying the pirates for the trouble, they would actually have the pirates divvy up the takings amongst themselves and the country that hired them under the table. So not only did you have to go out as a pirate and fuck over another boat and rob all the money and the gear, then you had to bring it back, and without sort of being caught bringing all this stolen stuff back, then divvy it up with the people that had hired you who hadn't actually hired you on paper. If we're to believe recent mirrors of modern society like Grand Theft Auto 5, then rich people are still using mercenaries to this day. But back in the 1600s, these mercenaries weren't committing corporate espionage. They were boarding and plundering the pay's ships. One of these rich guys was called Richard Livingston, who worked with the king's cousin to hire a pirate that I've already mentioned. Now, when I say hired, I mean it kind of loosely. Like they weren't given a direct order as such, more like they were allowed free reign of the oceans to just be a cunt to everyone around them. Captain Kidd, the aforementioned pirate, the watery Billy the Kid, if you like. But there was nothing wet about him. You like don't be thinking that. Don't be thinking because I'm saying the watery Billy the Kid that he was a bit of a wet guy. He wasn't. He was fucking, by all accounts, he seemed to be fucking hard as nails. He was described historically as an easily angered Scottish bloke who fought against France for the British in battles that took place in the West Indies, which is fucking, to me, that now, like nowadays, that's fucking weird, isn't it? That the idea that two countries that are exactly like next to each other, directly next to each other, with just a little fucking stream in between, realistically, in the great fucking aspect of the world, that they were fighting in each other, but in the West Indies. Anyway, by the time of his commission from the rich guys, he was already pretty wealthy though. Billy the Kid, well, Captain Kidd, I don't want to confuse him with any cowboys and that. He was already pretty wealthy at the time, so I don't get why he did it. It's almost like he must have been coerced, like he just went back out to sea when they told him to. Like, except for this time though, he wasn't fighting in a war as such. Like, he wasn't going to be fighting the French for the English or fighting the English for the French. Nor was he really starting a war either. He just seems to have been given carte blanche. Like, his orders were to attack any merchant ships he sees. But his newfound freedom, if you could call it that, like that, I don't know if you would call it freedom, innit? Because I really doubt he had a choice. As I say, it sounds more like an offer he couldn't refuse. And lucky, like, for the continuity of this show. Continuity sounds better, doesn't it? That's got to be the fucking word. Continuity of the show. Which, ironically, has fucking ruined the continuity of the show, realistically, the flow of the show. But either way, I mean, good for the next 45 minutes anyway. Like, he didn't say no to it. He went and did it, because it gives me an extra, like, the next sort of 5 minutes. Anyway, his commission allowed Billy Big Bollocks to attack pirates of all the nationalities that he wanted. Like, he didn't have to be like, I can't attack them because they've got a certain flag or their boat's painted like this or they've given us a certain hand signal, as we've gone past. He could do whatever he wanted to anyone he wanted. And he could keep anything at all that he plundered. He didn't need to share his winnings with his bosses like other pirates had to. There was no kick up to the guy paying his wages, which sounds too good to be true realistically, doesn't it? Like, if you're told if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And it's almost like they knew if they offered him these sort of parameters for his job, if you want to use quote-unquote job, that he wouldn't say no, and maybe he wouldn't be able to stop himself as well. Maybe he was a sociopath or a psychopath. Like, he must have been fucking mental if he was like, oh, you know, I've got a good life here, you know, I think he had a wife and kids, you know, and he's like, oh, I've got businesses, because he was a businessman as well, like a legitimate business owner, and he still went, you know what, fuck it, I'd love to go and fucking attack some people on boats. Not done it for a couple of years, you know, it fucking remind me of the good times. Anyway, he died like 5 years after receiving the job, so he must have been good at what he was doing, at least for a while, you know. I imagine it's a hard life at sea as well, because obviously scurvy was an issue, because they didn't have fruit and veg, because it wouldn't really last. But not just that, the fact that pirates were fucking knocking about trying to kill everyone, and that you're one of them. Even as a pirate, it must have been hard. It must have been hard as a pirate, because you know you've got no protection whatsoever from pirates, from other fucking countries, from everyone. No one's protecting the pirates. There's fucking raping, taking slaves, murdering people, kidnapping others. It's just a fucking horrible way to live. Like, imagine the stress. Plus, you've got stories of like fucking colossal squids, like the Kraken, and other weird stories of weird sea monsters and stuff, and weird storm activity, and storms, just normal storms at sea. Fucking hell, it's like, go on YouTube and look at a fucking video of a storm at sea. Like, some of the waves are like bigger than like the Empire State Building, mate. It's mental. And these people are like, oh, it's all worth it for a fucking couple handfuls of gold. Imagine killing everyone except for the person on a ship as well, like thinking it'll send the right message, you know, or we'll leave him alive and we'll send him off on his way to shore, because he'll go and tell everyone how much of a cunt I was and people will stay clear of us. But instead, like, that survivor just decides to dedicate his life to revenge and comes back with like a French, Spanish, or even like a fucking Persian fleet. You'd be fucked, mate. You would. You've been pissing everyone off for your own selfish gain, and you've even turned on your own as well. So that's another group that had joined the Survivor in like the fucking, like, I'm imagining this as like it'd be like the end of season finale, you know, like they pissed off him in like episode 2 and he's like, oh, I'll be back, you know, you little fucker, and he goes off and you see little cutaways through the series of him chatting in French, then you see him chatting in Spanish and then in Portuguese, and then he's in England, and and then at the end of towards like halfway through the end of the last episode, there's a little cliffhanger starts building. You see all these boats of all different colours working together to come towards the pirate, which is kind of what I was trying to say before, how it would bring countries together. But I'll get back into, like, rather than just imagining a TV series that probably won't ever exist. It wasn't just the misanthropic king's cousin, though, Bobby Livingston, that funded the misadventure, like that fucking Captain Kidd under the Tuck. There was 4 unnamed British guys as well that were reportedly 4 of the most powerful people in the British Isles at the time, and they threw $6,000 his way to get the ship kitted out, which I imagine, after doing a fair bit of reading yesterday on pirates and that, one of the reasons he did this was because there was stories circulating in the late 1600s about HenryAvery's ship, which was now called the Fancy rather than Charles II, and because that had been stripped and it had been deemed to be like one of the fastest ships in the ocean. I think it was in the Atlantic Ocean. After some time passed, though, these 4 businessmen did come out of the woodwork and revealed themselves. There was, get your fingers ready for this, 4 businessmen. Within these 4 businessmen, obviously they're all posh, there was 2 earls, the Duke of Shrewsbury, 2 secretaries of state, the First Lord of Admiralty, so they're already there. I think we're at 6 there, aren't we? That 4 has already become 6. And I don't even think that's from a mistake, mate. That's not even like a historical mistake, like someone's just counted wrong about it. It can't be. I imagine they just roped other people into it to protect themselves. They even included the king, so that's 7 people. And they gave the king a 10% cut of all takings before anyone else got a cut. Like, it was a completely legal, legitimate enterprise to be undertaken at the time. But for some reason, it still comes across as they were still covering their backs, you know, protecting themselves. But I guess if you include someone high up in the country's navy, though, and the leader of the country, that means that they're going to want to, either way, they're going to want to protect their investments. So it's pretty clever. And they've got the manpower to throw at it, the technology to throw at it, the people who in the know information, mate, just by including them and saying, we'll give you 10%. And then he won't get 10% of anything if it all goes to shit. So he's going to want to put in a bit of work. He'll think to himself, well, I'll put in 10% worth of the profits from it. You know what I mean? Like, say it's cost $6,000 in total. I'll give you 600 quid's worth of information, and I want, obviously I want fucking more back, because it was obviously being a pirate, or funding a pirate was probably more profitable than being a pirate itself, because as a pirate you're putting your fucking life on the line for realistically next to nothing. Like, why are you doing it really? You're not defending anything, you're not standing up for anything, you're literally just doing it for the money. Whereas the people that have paid you, they're doing nothing but being rich and becoming richer, and then obviously from that becoming more powerful and more influential. Anyway, I want to get back into HenryAvery, because that's who I wanted to focus on. So I'm going to leave the story of Captain Kidd like here for now. I might come back to him in a few weeks or something, but to cut a long story short for now, the same Admiralty, I don't know, I've only ever seen this word written down, that I think he was the lead admiral of the British fleet. What he did was, even though he was involved in all this and funded him and everything, allegedly, he then discreetly, discreetly funded him, but then openly fucking hung him. Like, literally fucking hung him. Took the rope round his neck and fucking killed the cunt. But between him taking the job on and getting killed, I reckon that'd be a fucking good film, that story. And I might cover that in an episode. I want to try and do an episode where I sort of take historical facts and try and make it into a story, so it's to try and see if I can write stories. Might be boring as fuck to you when you're listening to it, thinking, my god, this guy's never read a proper book. You can tell he only reads fucking facts. But anyway, fucking, this is going to nothing. Let's have a song. This is Low Key's new song. This is Baby Steps. Alright, sticking with me Grand Theft Auto 5, my GTA 5 reference. King of the Pirates, HenryAvery. He was a lot like Michael in the sense that he seemed to just want that one big score. And on his way to that, he worked up to it. So we touched on his slave trader dealings before, but that was just like a one stop on his mission, on his fucking campaign of terror. Whether or not he'd planned it to pull off the biggest score of pirating history eludes me. Like, I can't find... There isn't much record, because they're fucking pirates, mate, really. Like, they were bad people, and they were good at being bad people, so they covered the tracks. There's no real history to them, only really what seems to be folklore and anecdotal evidence, and maybe the odd journal and that. Like, I did find a bit of evidence from a historian, which I'll go into later. It wouldn't fit in now, it wouldn't make any sense in it, but... Like, I don't know if he'd planned it, like I say, like, fuck knows. It'd be kind of cool if he did, and he's got there with a map and a compass, and he's like, fucking hell, right, we'll stop off here, and we'll catch a couple slaves, and then we'll go over here, and we'll raid these merchants here, and we'll recruit more staff, which is what he did. He'd fucking rob a ship, be like, give us all your shit, give us your money, give us your food, give us your gun, give us your muskets, give us your cannons, give us your swords, and then he'd be like, right, do you want to work for me? And I'll give you more money than you could ever fucking imagine. And of course, a lot of them just went, yeah, fuck it. You've just burnt my ship, otherwise I'm just going to be stuck here and die. I would like to get home to my wife. Alright, I'll try not to take up too much of your time, innit, but I'd like if you signed up to my Patreon. It's free, mate. You can sign up to Patreon for free. So 7-day free trial on there. You get access to all the bonus podcasts, all the daily updates, which aren't daily and aren't really updates. They're more paranoid waffle, as someone described it as. This is just paranoid waffle they came back at me with. But they stayed with us. So a couple of new people joined just after the episode went out last week as well, so I appreciate that. Thank you if you're listening. I'm trying to start adding more on there. It's been going for years. There's all sorts of stuff already on there. But I was hoping that you might like what's on there, and then as more people get involved with it, then we'll grow it more. But I'm thinking of doing maybe like a Q&A, but it's like, ask me opinions. Like someone asked me the other day, how many insects, how many beetles do they reckon I could fuse to a testicle? How many beetles could I conjoin to a testicle? I quite enjoyed that, and I thought, you know what? If more people sent me questions like that, there's a little Patreon series there. I'll start answering them on there. Plus, that might get people to sign up, because they might want to hear their answer. Because, they can sign up for free. It's not going to cost them anything. They can sign up, hear the answer, see what else is on there. If it's not for them, they can leave. But you get access to all of my books on there as digital downloads. You get video versions of these But so bear in mind, this one here, HenryAvery, the Pirate King, this is would have been episode 15, when they went out initially on the radio. But you gotta then think, I've already recorded, I think 70 episodes so far for the radio that have gone out. And there's others that I've recorded that haven't gone out yet, like about Toy Story. So you won't have heard that yet. There's loads of others on there that you can watch as videos. You might find it a bit tedious because I'm watching it as a video, but you won't find out till you try, innit? And considering it's free, you might as well, for that first 7 days, give it a go. You get discounts from your website as well, discount codes, depending on which tier you choose. So it's for stuff like canvases, shirts, and then I think you get a bigger discount on the higher tiers for the canvases and shirts and things like that. For merch, basically, printed goods, What else? You get updates of me about the stuff that I've made. So you get to see things I've made recently, new ornaments. You get to know if there's going to be more bobblehead ducklings at the end of the week. You get to see photos of them, things like that, before anyone else. Because I might not post them on socials for 2 weeks or so. So if you want to see some, dead stuff behind the scenes in essence, but not watching what goes on behind the scenes, just like a sneak peek of what's to come. A premiere, mate. A premiere of bad taxidermy. If you fancy that, mate, join the Patreon, patreon.com/worldaroundyou, and then I'll let you get back into the Pirate King, mate. Speaking of pirating, no, don't be pirating me downloads on there and putting them on YouTube or out and then not giving me a cutback from it, a percentage. Don't do that, because I don't really make anything from it yet, innit? But, who knows, in the future, maybe it'll be something that people will clip and put on there. I doubt it very much. But, like I said, it got described as waffle. A lot of people are describing it as waffle. This is a very long way for me to try and get a couple of quid off you. But find me on Instagram as well, World Around You's Pod, or World Around You Pod. Leaving that in, mate. That's actually not a timer for the advert. That's a timer for my chicken wrap that I've just put in the oven about 5 minutes ago. Well, 15 minutes ago, a bit of chicken in the oven. So I'm going to let you crack on with that while I go and eat that. Join me Patreon, find me on Instagram, blah, blah, blah. Here's fucking a little bit more about HenryAvery, mate. Anyway, right, it don't really matter, innit? Like, if he planned to do it or not, because he still did it. Which is, like, that's a little lesson in life for people, realistically, innit? Like, if you don't plan too much, if something's going to happen, it'll happen anyway. This guy went on to be the Pirate King. Like, I don't think there's been any others. Obviously, in Archer, he's the Pirate King, but other than that, that's a fucking cartoon. This is fucking fact. Well, I say fact, loosely fact. I may have misunderstood a lot of this. Like, speaking of things I've misunderstood anyway, like other things that I bet that HenryAvery, Long Ben, Benjamin Bridgman, whatever his fucking name were, I bet he didn't plan his little ties to other alternative history and conspiracy lore, or did he? Like, one of his ships he worked on was named the Seventh Son, which gives the story of HenryAvery, like, it gives him ties to, loose ties, like, very fucking on by a thread, very fucking tenuous ties, but still a connection nonetheless to the occult. Occultists believe that a seventh son has the potential to have magical powers, and Henry did seem to possess the powers of persuasion. Now, I don't know if that's the same as being truly magical with a K, but it does seem he would impose his will on others, which seems to have something to do with magic, and we learned that in the Savile bits, that when I looked into Jimmy Savile, that was a bit to do with the magic that he supposedly was into, to impose your will on others. And if he was able to persuade all these different people to join his cause, and what he fucking eventually ended up doing, I mean, perhaps, like, most surprisingly, one of his ties is to September 11th. Now, he didn't use a boat to destroy an old-timey oceanic fucking oil derrick or anything like that, but he was directly affecting world trade, which I guess is a link. But the date itself was actually his wedding anniversary, which, is nice to know that his wedding anniversary was celebrated and documented, supposedly, to his wife Dorothy Arthur. But then you've got loads of historians that are saying, oh, he might not have actually been married to Dottie, that might have not been real. So, fuck knows. We don't know for sure if his actual wife was Dorothy. We don't know if he even did get married. But according to what I've found, some people at least believe he did get married to a woman named Dorothy Arthur on September the 11th, which, pretty... I mean, it's got nothing to do with the World Trade Center, but it's a little link, you know, it's a little something. And if you really want to stretch it even fucking thinner, there was a pope around that time in the 1600s and 1700s that would sort of hire pirates. He had a major predilection towards them, and he'd used them to his advantage of the church. Now, I'm unsure if Mr. Avery was one of the pirates signed off on by the Pope, but I'm pretty sure Henry Morgan was. Like, not 100% sure, but pretty sure. And if Henry Morgan was HenryAvery, then maybe he was tied to the Pope at the time. Getting back into the story of Long Ben, aka HenryAvery, I can't help but wonder if he's an accidental symbol. Like, have you ever considered that there may be societies that have one name but many faces? That'd allow 5 or 6 people to be the same person, innit? Now, maybe this was one of the early attempts at this, or maybe it's what led to that form of society being made. We've already learned that insanely rich, influential people lie about their names, and even about the amount of people that they actually are. You'll remember how 4 became 6 plus a king. So, who's to say that they didn't initially think if we have 6 people all doing the same job title that it would work? Then they realised it'd be better to have 6 people use the same name to do different jobs, because that creates a legend. It creates fear, notoriety. Maybe HenryAvery was one of these pirate kings, possibly even the most effective or vocal of the several pirate kings that may have existed. Kind of like a ghostwriter. They say, you know, so-and-so wrote the song, innit? But in reality, it was written by 2 or 3 different people in 6 different parts from initially 10 different songs all just cobbled together by people who can't even sing. Anyway, however many people Avery was, his first achievement as a pirate captain was near Cape Verde, where he robbed 3 English merchant ships, which got him more than just weapons and money. It got him more followers. King Bridgman was living up to his name. Avery in the sense that he was capturing future jailbirds and building bridges amongst like-minded criminals. After a job on the Guinea coast where they captured a chieftain and enslaved them, they then travelled to a maritime chop shop and shed some weight from the Charles II, almost as if to make it really feel like their own ship, you know, the Fancy, as I said before, they called it the Fancy. But these changes meant that the ship was now one of the fastest in the Atlantic Ocean at the time. A great thing if you're working alone, but maybe not if you're working in a team. Although I guess if all of the ships are arriving from different directions at different times at different speeds, that means you can stagger the fight, and that could possibly turn the battle into a battle of attrition rather than a simple round of oldie-worldy fisticuffs. Then, they were on the way to their big job now. So, somewhere or another they'd heard of this shipment, a convoy that was headed for Mecca. Whether it's because the Mughal Empire, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Mughal, M-U-G-H-A-L, I'm going to go Mughal, or Mwaggle, because it kind, I don't know, it's that GH in the middle, I don't know how you would pronounce that. Mughal Empire would repeat the journey every year anyway, every single year, obviously it's a pilgrimage, innit? So either they found out about it because they knew it happened every year, because he'd been about in the waters, in the seas for most of his life, or maybe someone was talking about it. Either way, Avery had managed to muster a fleet of 6 ships, of which he got deemed admiral of the fleet, and they set off to steal from these vessels that were on the pilgrimage. At this point in time now, this is where he had the 440 pirates, and these were split amongst 6 ships, so attempting to take on a 25-ship strong convoy of soldiers and civilians, you know, it was a risky move. But I guess they'd never expect it. You wouldn't think, oh, them 6 ships, they're really going to cause us a bit of aggro, are they there? You know, that's going to be a bit of maiver for us there. And as it turns out, it did surprise them. And something that will surprise the social justice warriors of social media is that this was an Asian empire that they were attacking, not an empire of white people. Obviously, it's not the only empire that has existed that wasn't white people, and I don't seem to. It does seem to just be the American social justice warriors that you see online ranting and raving about stuff like this. But I know nothing else about it other than what I'm saying here. So I could be wrong, innit? Like I'm open to being wrong. And that in itself, mate, is something that you'll never hear a social justice warrior say on one of their videos or shows. Anyway, the attack on the convoy seemed to go quite well for the pirates. it went terribly for the passengers of the Ganges Valley. They lost all of their gear, and a lot of them died in the fights. A lot of them topped themselves as well before they could be raped by the pirates. It's took a bit of a turn there, hasn't it? It's gone from being quite a jovial little story, but you must have been expecting it. It's fucking about pirates, mate. If it makes you feel any better, like the rapes themselves weren't just over the top indulgences on behalf of the pirates. From what I've been reading, they were sort of doing it as a tool, which is still wrong. I'm not suggesting it's a good tool, but it's a tool, like in the same way a screwdriver is neither evil nor good, in this sense. But obviously raping is always bad. Just gonna fucking, just in case someone's listening to this and they think, oh, there's a soundbite. Fucking, they were doing it to the passengers and to the slaves to try and find out where they'd hidden the treasures in the hold so that they could leave the ship and leave the people. From what I've read, I don't know if that's right. I don't know if that's someone going back and saying this is what they did. Fuck knows. But I did find someone who was making notes at the time, allegedly. Now, and it proves that the captains of these 25 ships, they were cunts and all. Because according to Indian historian Muhammad Hashim, he claims the captain of one ship released his slave girls. Which sounds nice initially, doesn't it, at first? I mean, you're out in the middle of the fucking ocean, so releasing them's not really going to do much. But he didn't release them in the sense of you're now free women, you're now so-and-so free man, so-and-so free woman, or out like that. Nothing like that. He just fucking freed them out of the fucking cages or wherever he had them in, the hold, and armed them so that they could fight the pirates, mate, which is fucked. Like, I can't imagine an army of slaves is the best type of army in any situation. Because I can't imagine you could trust an army of slaves. Like, sure, you rule them with fear, innit? But they'll be able to sense the fear in you as well, because you've just fucking give them all swords and you trust in them. And you've sent them to fight alongside their oppressors, which seems like a risky move in itself. But basically, they were meat shields. Like, realistically speaking, that's what I think he was going for with them. Now, the fight on the ship, I found some details about that, and it seems to have lasted around 3 hours, which is a fucking long time to be fighting for. Like, 20 minutes is a long fight, innit? Do you know what I mean? Like, 20 minutes in itself is a long fight in normal fighting, with your fists. I can't imagine even doing, like, fucking half an hour of fighting with a fucking heavy iron stick in your hand. The pirates, though, it seemed that they had a little bit of a stroke of luck, which seemed to sway the battle in their favour. One of the cannons misfired in the mecha-bound ship and exploded, distracting a lot of the fighters, meaning that they had to try and put the fires out whilst they were also having a fucking cannon battle with these other boats that were knocking about. And I'm guessing they had to put it out as well before the fucking gunpowder that was used for the cannons ignited and killed everyone on board, and probably nearby as well. Because I imagine if you blow up a ship with fucking cannonballs in it, them cannonballs are fucking going everywhere and anywhere. They're not going to be fired through the cannon. Through the cannon. It would have killed the pirates, it would have killed the slave owners, the slaves, the workers on the ship, the fucking, not pedestrians, civilians on the ship. But it didn't, not at least for the duration of the battle, from what I can see. Anyway, that got a bit fucking dark there, so let's have what sounds like quite a cheery song. I love this song. This is Shabazz the Disciple, and this is Red Hook Day. This episode was brought to you by Fat Pete's Prints. I'm actually wearing one of their shirts now. It's of some ropey looking guy with glasses on that's licking a lollipop covered in hair, and he's called the Lollygagger. Well, there's the Lollygagger shirt. They got a new one on there as well that I saw, when I was checking for this. There's one that just says sausage across the chest. Now, you can get yourself a little discount on there if you use the discount code. You're going to want to use the discount DEADRAT, DEADRAT. Dead Rat, and you'll be able to save yourself a certain percentage on any order that you make through Fat Pete's Prints on Etsy. So there'll be a link in the description. There'll be a link in the link tree on my link tree on any of my socials. You can find that. That's DEADRAT for however much percent off, 10 I think. Anyway, so nice one. Thank you to Fat Pete's Prints. I haven't even explained how they did the mutiny. A testament to Avery's character, really. No bloodshed, and he allowed the previous captain to leave the ship rather than killing him. It came about because they were all pissed off as he had left the river. But this is when it all started. Like, my storyline is all over the fucking place this week. But when it started, when he became the captain, and when he became a pirate, basically. So he allowed the previous captain of the ship to leave. And it's because when they'd left the River Thames in England, the River Thames, on the way to Spain, there was a lack of paperwork, as I said, or a clerical error, and that meant they were forced to wait for quite a long time without pay as well. Like, they were paid initially up until a certain point, and then pay stopped, and people started getting a bit antsy and pissed off, and they didn't like being trapped on this boat. And the journey itself, though, it should have. The reason why they were annoyed is the journey should have took a few weeks to get from the Thames to Spain. At that time, apparently, was 2 to 3 weeks, dependent on weather. This took them a few months. I think it was around 5 months at this point, where they'd just been fucking stationary in the sea. Now, that seems to me like almost someone had organised this, because it's the perfect storm, innit? Like, to cause something to happen, to make one of the Reds snap. Maybe they were doing this with lots of ships. I don't know. I don't know how they made pirates come into being pirates. At the time, the crew believed it was a power play by the Spanish, a ploy to enslave them. Seems a bit paranoid, innit? But I mean, and that's coming from the guy that's fucking telling you aliens are coming at you from the moon and there's a fucking genetic modifying base in the moon. But I think that's quite paranoid. But at the same time, I can understand why they'd be pissed off. The captain at the time as well of that ship was bedridden. Presumably, I imagine, ill rather than just lazy. And it only took 26 people, including Avery himself, to take control of the ship. Now, that's impressive in a ship with a crew of thousands of people, but not that impressive in a ship if it's only got a crew of 30 people. Now, unfortunately, I don't know how many were on the ship, but as I said earlier, the newly elected Captain HenryAvery, he was a gentleman, and he allowed the captain and the loyal crew members to him to leave and head for shore, all except for the surgeon. They weren't going to lose their only healthcare professional, innit? Like, that's hard to come by in the middle of the ocean, and especially free healthcare as well. That's even harder to find for a lot of people around the world. But are you going to trust a doctor who's being forced to work against his will? In a possibly iconic first voyage as pirates, they then headed off for the Cape of Good Hope, which is quite a nice name of a place to go to on your first adventure, innit? It is like the start of a TV series or a game or a film or something. And they all had the understanding that they'd divvy up any of the takings evenly amongst themselves, so they'd get one share of everything there each, and then the captain himself, he would get 2 shares for being the captain and taking on the responsibility of leading them all. And that, for what turned out to be a fucking legendary captain, that seems more than fucking fair in my opinion. Now, you need to be fair in that situation, though, realistically, don't you? Because they've already mutinied once, so you know that they're going to try it again if you do fuck them over. So you are on the sort of the back foot, you're on the defensive a bit with him. He was legendary, I guess, because I feel like I should explain that after saying so long about how he was getting his troops to fucking rape people on ships and that. He was legendary in the way that in his 2-year career, he was able to go from law-abiding citizen to having the biggest haul of any pirate ever. You wouldn't steal a handbag. You wouldn't steal a car. But you would steal 600 grand's worth of precious metals and jewels and enter the Criminal Hall of Fame, wouldn't you? Not only was the raid successful, Avery earned his notoriety as well by becoming the first person in recorded history to be wanted all around the world at the same time. And at that time, he had a £1,000 bounty put on his head. He pissed off a lot of people in a short space of time, basically, and to put it into context, the 600 grand's worth of loot today, that'd be worth approximately £92 million. That's $123 million if you're listening and you're in America or anywhere that doesn't understand pounds. But that means that his bounty would have been about £153,000. Now, even today, some people aren't worth £1,000, like they don't have that in the bank, let alone knowing that your life is worth £153,000 to total strangers all around the world. Fucking, I'll see you in a bit, mate. Just a little thing before you go. If you could leave a rating, like leave a little 4-star rating, whatever you think's applicable to the show, that would be appreciated. It'd be nice if you could do that. You can do that on Spotify, you could do that on Apple. Hopefully it just helps me reach more people. Share it on your stories as well if you enjoyed it. Hopefully, you're going to go and listen to all the others now. See how they all blend together. Not like blend together into one and they become, all the same thing, all the same tribe or all like that, but how they all sort of lead into each other. Maybe you've learned something in here that now makes the other ones make sense. Or, like I said earlier, go and listen to the rest on my Patreon. You can join for free, 7-day free trial. I'll see you in a bit.